Welcome to the Microsoft Teams training. My name is Luke Beckman with the Pacific Division for Disaster Cycle Services. This training is intended for any volunteer and paid staff who work as a part of a team. You could be from a chapter, region, division, or national headquarters. This training is also intended for anyone who collaborates remotely with teammates and anyone who's looking to find new ways to engage existing teammates. Our learning objectives for this training. We're going to talk about what is Teams and how does it fit into our overall technology architecture with the Red Cross. We'll discuss change management. How can Teams help you and your teammates become more effective? We also need to focus on the importance of information management as well as simplicity. We will talk about how to get access to Teams, how to download Teams, and the different components of Teams. We'll walk through it in depth. What is Teams? How does it fit into our work? Teams, as you see here, is part of our inner loop, the way Microsoft describes it. There's also an outer loop. If you're from DC, it's like the Beltway. The inner loop for Teams, everything really is about who you work with on a regular basis. So when they say inner loop, we're talking about people you work with regularly on core projects. The outer loop, we're talking about people you connect with openly across the organization. Everything with Microsoft really is built around SharePoint. SharePoint is not this big crazy beast that we all need to be scared about. SharePoint is simply just a website that Microsoft gives us as part of the Red Cross, where we can access files, sites, and content. Most people, 98% probably only use SharePoint for file management and storage, and it's gotten a lot better over the last couple of years. We need to think about Teams in context. If we think about the loops, think about Teams in context with Yammer as well as Outlook. You can have Outlook groups, you can have Yammer groups, you can have Teams groups, and all of those talk to SharePoint. And then within that, or I should say the broader encompassing thing is Office 365. So that's basically all of the Microsoft tools we have at our fingertips, and we're able to access those by having a redcross.org login and email. And we can access those off of any computer just by using a web browser. Yammer is also misunderstood. Think of it as a discussion forum that can be created around any group or topic. A team, you could have 5 people or you could have 5,000 people. And with Outlook email, you can send emails back and forth with people. You can do task management just a little bit. And you can also create Outlook groups. So all these things together are our Microsoft world. Let's talk change management. When you're thinking about going to Teams or thinking about changing from anything you do today, you need to first ask, what does your team do today? What are the tasks that people perform? How do people keep track of task management? How do people accomplish work that needs to get done? Next, ask, what do you want your team to be able to do? Do you take notes for meetings? Do you schedule conference calls? Do you do video conferencing? Do you do file management? Do you have a collaboration portal? Do you use a project management suite? Think about what you do now and then what you want to be able to do. Also think about, how do you cover for each other when somebody's on vacation, when they're on leave, or they're deployed to a disaster? How do you support each other with complex tasks, programs, and projects? It's one thing for me to be able to accomplish simple tasks. It's another thing for me to be able to run a project by myself, but more often than not, we're collaborating with other people. So how do you go about that today, and where do you struggle? Where you see struggle areas, that's probably where Teams can come in handy. Let's think about information management and simplicity. First, look back at what you want your team to be able to do. So that previous slide. Next, figure out what you want the big picture to look like. Map it out. Grab a blank piece of paper and sketch it out. You don't need every gizmo and gadget. You don't need 1,000 different things, because trust me, you're not going to use them. But also start small. So don't start with 10 things you think you need. Start with one thing that you think you need. Once you have that information management strategy down, that is 90% of what you need. I should say the hard lift that you need to do. You can create all kinds of different teams. You can create all kinds of groups. You can do file shares out the wazoo. The problem is you're going to get lost in it. No one's going to know where to find a file. No one's going to know where to have a conversation. No one's going to know how to collaborate on a project. What that's going to result in is everybody's going to go back to post-it notes and pieces of paper at home on their own computers, and nothing's going to get shared. So really focus on that second one. Figure out what you want the big picture to look like. Map it out. How to get access to Teams. You need a Red Cross email. If you don't have a Red Cross email, you can ask a paid staff member in your region, and they can request an email for you. And email creation usually takes about 72 business hours. But if you're watching this video, you don't have an email, you should absolutely get one. Now, how to download Teams. Teams is much easier to use when you download it from a web page, and that's teams.microsoft.com/downloads. Let's take a look at what that looks like. So you go to the download page here, download Microsoft Teams on any device. You'll come to this web page, just click download Teams. Pretty simple and straightforward there. You should also download Teams on your phone. There's an app, just go to the App Store, Microsoft Teams. It's extremely slick, easy to use. You log in with the same Red Cross credentials as you would for your Outlook email, as well as for Teams itself. There's also some other apps you may want to look at downloading. I have them on my device. I should say all my devices. Microsoft Planner, Microsoft OneDrive, Microsoft OneNote, SharePoint, and Yammer. This training is focused on Teams, but all of these tools work really well together in Teams, and we'll dig into each one just a little bit. So let's look at the components. Within Teams, you have Teams, channels, and tabs. You have alerts and notifications. You can do meetings, new files, notes, conversations, and task tracker. Those are all pretty much out of the box, very simple, straightforward to use. So let's dig into Teams as a application. So now you're seeing on my shared screen, by the way, this recording I am doing through Microsoft Teams. So you don't need special equipment. I intentionally did this so that you can see how easy it is to record a training, record a video, post it online through something called Microsoft Stream, or publish it to YouTube. A bunch of different ways to go about that. So this is the Teams application. The way that I'm recording this meeting or recording this training is that I created a meeting. I'm the only one in the meeting, and now I'm recording it. So the first thing is your left-hand navigation pane. The primary thing you're going to see is activity. That's any mentions, chats, likes, back and forths. This is sort of the one-stop shop to see everything that's going on. You also have a chat that's with individual team members, so you can chat back and forth. This next section shows all of your actual teams. If you don't use a team very frequently, you can hide it, or if it's old. Your calendar shows things that are actually on your calendar, meetings you need to attend, and you can also join Teams meetings directly, and you can schedule meetings with Teams. You can also see calls here. To do a direct call to someone, Teams is superseding and replacing Skype for Business. Microsoft has announced that Skype for Business is dying, going away. Teams will replace it, and it's actually very slick. Doesn't crash as much. Screen sharing capabilities are very powerful. You can even get an audio conference line with Teams. You have to request that, so don't just assume that you're going to get that. There's a small cost. It's less than $3 per user per month. But if you need to have that audio conferencing capability, that needs to be associated with your specific account. So first, I want to talk about alerts and notifications. Within Teams, you have your, as you do with any Microsoft product, you've got your taskbar up at top. You're probably not going to use this very much, but what I wanted you to do is to get towards the top of your screen. When you become a power user, you'll be able to use this command line to type in different things that you want to find. For what we're doing, it's pretty straightforward where you may not need to use this, but it's just something to take a look at. You can also create a new message or new chat right away with one of your contacts, and here's the back bar. So that's the upper left-hand corner, the upper middle, and here's the upper right. So here's my profile. You can see I'm actually presenting. I can change my status. But what I want you to do is to first go to settings, and under settings, you'll see notifications. And there's a couple different styles of notifications: banner and email, banner, only, show and feed. What I would do to start is I would probably select banner. What this is going to do, and do that down the row here, this way you're not going to get an email for every single thing that happens in Teams. You're not going to get bombarded. You also have here, you can start teams right when your computer starts. You can change the theme in the background. You can change your language. Privacy, we don't have a whole lot going on there. Notifications, we just talked about. Devices, you can actually see, here I am, and you can actually see your screen and do a recording. You can set microphones, speakers, audio devices, and you can do a test call to see how your screen is working, as well as how your microphone is working. Permissions, you have to give permission for teams to be able to use your camera, location notifications. You can turn some of that off if you want. And for calls, you can set how people do calls. I haven't touched any of this with the exception of notifications. And again, I set almost all of these to banner right out of the gate. So now let's first talk about the meetings. This is a really powerful feature in Teams. So when you want to schedule a new meeting, you would create just a regular title, just like you do in Outlook. You can invite someone. I'm going to look at my colleague here, Ian, and you can see that Ian's free at this time. You can also set up your normal scheduling assistant to find times that work for people. And you'll see here, Ian's busy. There's the block of when he's busy. But now I've got more free time. So you invite someone through this upper link here. You can also, once you have teams established, you can also invite everyone in a team by just clicking on one of the names of your teams. This is a really important thing. The way that Teams is set up right now, even if I go into what is called a channel within a team, we'll explain that in a second. I have let's go to our external relations work group for the Pacific Division. I have a general channel, community partnerships, and government operations. If I invite the government operations channel, they will get notified about it, just the people who pay attention to that channel, but everyone in the external relations work group gets invited to the meeting. So think about with Outlook, you might have Outlook groups set up. You can type in actual names of groups to invite a larger group of people. You can invite an entire team, or you can do one-offs invites, just like you normally would through Outlook. You select your time. You can put in details of the meeting. Again, I said the title. I personally have a phone number associated with meetings. I have requested that. That is something that IT has set up for me. If you don't know whether you have that set up, you probably don't have the phone number. However, do a test meeting, invite one of your teammates, and they'll be able to see when they pull up the invite. I'll discard these changes. When they pull up the invite, they'll see a number and a conference ID. Now, if everyone was joining from the computer, then the meeting invite will work for them to dial in just over the internet. But if somebody's on the road, they're in the car, they're getting on a plane, then they may need that dial-in number, and that's where you would need this number. For me, this number is the same when I schedule all of my meetings, the 3457, but the conference ID is different and unique for every single meeting. That's one important thing to look at. You can go to options here, and it is, I think our IT has not yet set that up. But what I just showed you is how to pick a time, how to look at calendars that work for people in terms of finding a time that works when people are free, and then how you will see the meeting come across. So those are your meetings. Let's go into the Teams section now. This is really where you're going to live and breathe. Within Teams, what we're looking at is here, as I mentioned, all of the different teams that exist. So we're going to go ahead and pull up the external relations work group. So for starters, I'm going to go over to General here, and you'll see I have tabs. You have a team, channels, and tabs. Channels are a way to subdivide your team, but everyone in a team is part of a channel. But a channel is a way where you can just organize information a little bit more. Remember how I mentioned earlier that information management is key here. There are a lot of different ways that you can set up a team. You're given with every team a conversation, files, and a wiki. Meeting notes here is also a wiki page. This is in some ways almost infinitely customizable, but let's look at a conversation. You can see who's joined teams. You can chat with specific people. The way to do that is you can say either @team, and this message would go to everyone. And then you can put in a specific person's name to reference them specifically, and they'll get a notification here in that activity up in the upper left. But this is just a way to talk back and forth. You can reply to specific messages, and you can see what's going on in the broader team. It's helpful, but to me, it's not the critical core piece of Teams. Files is really where you're going to live and breathe. You always have a general channel that is set up, and I mentioned how Teams is related to SharePoint. If I want to just open a file, I might click on it. Let's look at an example document we're looking at here, the Government Operations Task Book. I'm basically using Microsoft Office OneDrive. I can edit the document. I can edit in Teams, desktop browser, desktop app. I'm going to click edit here. Now I'm editing an Excel document through Teams. You can start a conversation related to this document. This is still in Teams. And you can also, if you're editing, collaborating on a document, I could go into comments here within the document itself, just like you may have done with Microsoft Office OneDrive. So that's a comment specifically in the file. This is a comment on the document within Teams. So let me close this here. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to open SharePoint. Now, I mentioned SharePoint for a lot of people is this big scary thing, but SharePoint is really just a way to organize files, and it's a web page. When you create a new team, there is a group in SharePoint, in Office, Microsoft Office, that gets created. The reason why I open SharePoint here is if you need to move a whole bunch of files into a folder, or if you need to move folders around, this is the place to do it. Do it in SharePoint. You select here on the left-hand side, and you can click Move To or Copy To. Now let's say I want to move these 3 documents into my California Statewide Documents folder. I'm going to click Move To. First, I'm going to go over to the right-hand side where I get this little pop-up, move 3 items. Where do I want to move them? I can move them to an entirely different team, but like I said, I just want to move them to California Statewide Documents. That's in my existing library. So I'm going to click Current Library. We were in the General channel, so you're always going to click General. And then here, California Statewide Documents. If I move them here, let's just do this for argument's sake. It says moving 3 items. Can't do it because it can't move that one document because I was using it, but it moved 2 of them. So let's take a look at those 2 documents. Don't worry, I'll move them back. Here they are, the 2 documents I just moved. Let me move them back. Move to, Current Library, General. I'm in the General channel, and I'm going to move them here. If I click on this folder, I go into it, but see how I go back there? I can also click these back arrows. What I'm going to do is I'm going to click on General, and they'll just live standalone, not inside a specific folder. So I'm moving those, moved back to General, and here are my documents. So that's the beauty of using SharePoint for these files. I can even click on the document, download it, put it on my desktop, and you can copy the link. So if you need to collaborate with a team member, let somebody else know what's going on, you copy the link, and they now get access to the file, and I can put that right into an email. So that's how manipulating files in Teams is done more easily through SharePoint. You can also check here. I can grab the link, I can download, and yes, I can move or copy, but I'll show you here. This one's actually not too bad because I'm not moving whole folders, but I'm in General. I could move it to California Statewide Documents just like this. So this one works. SharePoint for me is the better bet, but you've got 2 options there. Adding cloud storage, we don't need to do in the red cross. Upload, if you want to bring documents into your folder, that's a great way to go about that. And you can also create a new document from scratch or folder. So you can do Word, Excel, or PowerPoint all through Microsoft Office. So that's files within a team. Before we go across, I want to take you to the 3 dots here. So 3 dots. Manage your team, add channel, add member, leave the team, edit, or get a link to the team. One of the most common things you might do is add a member. When you add a member, I'll just put in Smith. We've got Nancy Smith here. When you click add, that's going to bring them into your team, and people can either be owners or they can be team members. So let's go to manage team. You see here I have my owners and I have my members and guests, just the regular team workforce. And you can switch somebody from a member and an owner very easily. The only way that you'll see this is if you're an owner of the team. You can add a member this way as well. So those are the 3 dots there. And adding a channel, I have community partnerships, government operations. I might want to add public affairs. I could do this, add my description, and then automatically show this channel in everyone's channel list. That would just sort of alert everybody that I've created this channel. I'm not going to do that right now. Let's go back to the team. You see here when I click it, it minimizes or maximizes the channels. I'm going to go to general. Then I'm going to go over to my wiki. Now wiki comes, this is standard basic notes, and it comes standard with teams. A wiki here is only related to a specific channel within a team. And there's 2 levels of a wiki. I click the hamburger here and I can minimize or maximize my sidebar. And if I scroll down, you'll see here I can add pages or sections. Those are the 2 ways that I can search and manipulate my wiki. So if I click a new page, we'll call this, I have to highlight everything. New page, new section 1. And I can go here and go section 2. And then you put your content. And as I do that, you can see here I'm able to quickly navigate to these different pages. Let me delete this page. And here's my existing page. Now, meeting notes. Once you schedule your first meeting, Teams often throws you a tab that says meeting notes. It's just another wiki. You can very easily, just by clicking on the down arrow, either rename or remove different tabs within one of your channels. This plus sign here shows you different tabs and things that you can add to your channel within your team. There are tons. Here's what we've used most frequently. We've used Microsoft Office OneNote. We've used Planner for task management. Sometimes we've added a website, so you can actually navigate to an external website and it kind of makes it like a dashboard. You can do that with Power BI and different charts and graphs. You could even go to Microsoft Stream, which is Microsoft's version of YouTube. Now, OneNote is interesting because OneNote is a separate application and it gives you a little bit better search functionality. The difference right now in Microsoft Teams between a wiki and OneNote is that the wiki cannot be edited from your phone. Microsoft will hopefully change that very soon, but OneNote you can change through your phone. Let's go to an example of where I have Microsoft Office OneNote linked into Teams. We'll go into our Pacific Division DCS Leadership Group, and I go into Notebook. Again, I've named this notebook, but all I did was click plus, and I added OneNote. Look at it again. So if I click OneNote, I could post to the channel. And what it's going to do is it's going to pull up all of my notebooks because it's linking to my Microsoft account. This one gets a little bit tricky only because you might have a lot of notebooks that are created. And every time you create a new team, a notebook is created automatically. And I'll show you how to find that in a second. But with OneNote, again, you've got, they call it sections and pages. But the nice thing about OneNote is you've got a global search. So I could search owner and it will find me in all sections wherever the word owner is referenced. You can do audio recordings in OneNote, and since OneNote is a separate application, you could be editing your OneNote notebook outside of Teams and having this sync to Teams right in one place. But let's go back so you can see, if you wanted, where that notebook is created when you create a new team. I'm going to go back to SharePoint, where I said some things happen in the background. Here's a notebook. Nothing should be in this one, but it's going to go and pull up my notebook. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. So the notebook for my team, External Relations Workgroup Pacific Division General Notebook, was created. There's a link to this. And so what I could do is I could add a tab here for my notebook, either via website or via OneNote. So there's two ways I could go about that. So it's worth playing around before you add a whole bunch of people to your team. Play around with what you want to do between OneNote or your wiki. The last thing I wanted to show you here in terms of a tab, like I said before, keep it simple, keep it basic. Conversation, files, some place to take notes, and a task tracker. This section is related to Planner, Microsoft Planner. And in Planner, you can either create a new plan or pull from existing plans. And here's our a plan within Planner is created when you create a new team. So I'm just going to pull this rather than creating something new, because why create extra things when you don't have to? Planner is slick for a couple reasons. You can add buckets. So you could do buckets by team member names. You could do it by Luke and Susie, and I scroll to the right, a 2-finger mouse pad scroll there, and Jim. We could be the 3 team members, and I could have a task which is record teams training. You set a due date. I can assign it to myself or to somebody else who's part of my team. I'm going to add the task. I can go into the task by clicking on the 3 dots. I can assign labels, which could be pretty slick. If I wanted to if you have owners of tasks, labels could be by your different channels. It could be by prepare, respond, recover. It could be by different goals. You can do a whole bunch of things with labels. But I'm going to click into this task. I can change a start date and a due date. I can change the progress, which is just not started, in progress, or complete. I can put in a description, and I can do a checklist, which checklist in this case would be build training template, set up headset, set up microphone, publish video. So as I do these things, checklist gets completed. I can add attachments, and I can comment. I can collaborate with my team around a specific task. And here are your labels, so you can hover. I can label this label 1. You can change your label here. I could call this, this is a technology task that I have to do, or technology project. So I can see my label here. And you can group things differently by who it's assigned to. You can group by progress, due date, labels, or what we had originally, the buckets. You can also see with Planner charts, so you can see what tasks you have remaining. You can also see a schedule. The schedule is effective if you have start and due dates, or start and end dates, and you can see, almost like a Gantt chart, how many simultaneous tasks you have at one point in time. So that I've renamed to be priorities. You could call it tasks, you could call it projects, programs, whatever you want to call it, things to do. It's really slick and very helpful, and provides for great shared situational awareness. So those are the tabs that we have within Teams. What I can do also is when I'm in a channel, I can set notifications. Remember, in the upper right-hand corner, we did notifications at the global level for my entire account, but I can set notifications for a specific channel. If it's something that I care about, you can see notifications for all new posts and channel mentions each time a channel is mentioned. For all new posts, your options, again, like before, are banner and feed, meaning banner is up top. You get a little pop-up. Feed is something that goes in activity. So you can get both, just the feed, or you can turn that off. So that's another place where you can set your notifications. Now looking here, I can hide teams if there are teams that I don't want to use, if I want to get rid of perhaps. I can also, within a team, let's go back here for a recap. I'm in my external relations work group. team, I'm in the general channel. I could go to the community partnerships channel. We haven't done much in this yet, but you see here, it's got some default things right away to get started, which would put tabs across the top in my channel. It only defaults to conversations, files, and that wiki. But I could, within my specific channel or team, I can meet now. So I could schedule a meeting and pull everybody in the meeting right away. And that's a really helpful tool. Two things that I want to show you. I'll see if I can do this in this training, since I'm sharing my screen. There are, I should say, you have the ability, here we go. You have the ability to obviously share all or part of your screen. You can mute yourself, turn on your camera. And you can also, you're going to have to see me here for a second. I'm going to turn my camera on. All right, here we are. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to, let's see if I can do it. I'm going to blur my background. So you see this, if you have a whole bunch of people moving in the background, distractions, pictures on the wall you want people to see, bad lighting, whatever it is, you can blur your background so that people focus primarily on you. And that's a really helpful feature and one I've seen people use a lot. You can see participants, and as people are invited, you can actually mute them. If somebody hasn't joined, you can ask them to join. So this is a great way for audio management. If somebody's got a lot of background noise, you can also do a chat, just like you were able to do with Skype for Business and in most video conferencing programs. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn off my camera and flip back to my PowerPoint deck. So we talked about teams versus channels versus tabs. We talked about alerts and notifications, meetings, files and how that relates to SharePoint, notes, conversations, and task tracker. That is how we at this point over the last couple months have been able to use Teams quite effectively, and we've really started ramping up, and it gives a really clear way for people to collaborate virtually, to support you when you're out, and to just manage your own work a little bit better. So let's go back to our learning objectives before we wrap up here. We talked about what Teams is, how it fits into our architecture. We talked about change management. If you're not using it, how do you get people on board? Or what are the things you really need to think about? Simplicity is key. Map out how you want this to look before you build it, and build it before you invite people. We talked about how to get access to Teams, how to download Teams, both to your computer and to your phones, and then the components of Teams. I hope this has been helpful. This isn't designed to be an all-encompassing thing of everything in Teams, but simply how we found Teams to be extremely effective to date and how we're using it in our steady state and in a bit of our operational roles. Thank you for joining, and we'll see you on another training sometime soon.